Thanks for coming on today, Mr. Stephen. Today we have Stephen, who I am going to get to learn a little bit more about today. We have met around Brian Called Station through some dance classes, I think, at one point, and then we've also met through what was that thing we did? Wednesdays in the mornings, 9 a.m.
1 million cups.
1 million cups, yes. So we met over there, and that was a good time. And recently had a conversation about what he is doing with his business and how it's, I guess, now where he is at with the new company he's with. But he's lived a very interesting life where he's been able to have his own business and was able to sell that last year, I believe, and now here we are. So, Stephen, thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So walk me through, what was it like having your own business? When did it start? What do you do? What kind of business is it? All those good things. Or was it?
Oh, okay. Well, my business was TechBundle. I had it for just shy of 20 years. I started it right after the internet bubble burst and 9/11 happened, January 2001, or I guess January 2002. And it was just because there were so many layoffs at the time, I couldn't get a job. So I started an IT consulting business that turned into a managed service business years later, and built it up to about a $2 million revenue company. And last year sold out to a partner that I had brought on about 6 years prior. And he's still running it, and it's going strong. Now I'm on to new and better things.
So if you can describe to me what type of business that is. I don't know very much about the tech world. So you said it started off as a IT consulting business and then moved from that into a services. What did you say?
Managed service providing business.
What does that mean?
So a managed service provider is the big difference is that we had monthly contracts with our clients. And we went in, and rather than just coming in and fixing things when they broke, we were in charge of making sure they never broke, and became the entire IT department for those customers. So we provide them a CIO, we provide them with a help desk. If there was something that we physically didn't do ourselves, we managed the entire project for the customer as well. So if they needed anything from custom programming to cables run for new construction, we would manage those projects for the customers, but even though we weren't personally doing the work in all those cases.
Hot damn, that's pretty damn involved. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I learned a lot. It was a lot of fun.
So we've gone from there to now. Tell me about the business you currently work for.
Okay, so the business I work for now, I'm the CTO for a company called Hire Dragons. We do brand ambassador and event staffing, which means that for brand ambassador work, mostly what we're doing is alcohol tastings in liquor stores all across the U.S., from everywhere from Seattle down to Miami, New Jersey, all over Texas. And when a brand needs someone to go do one of those tastings, they hire us to fulfill that. And we go in and provide a platform for brand ambassadors to get on and find those jobs that are near them, and kind of like the Uber for brand ambassadors. is one way to look at it.
That is a really cool, fun way to look at it. And definitely I feel like something that is a growing business and something that I think is really, fun, cool, gets people out there. And it seems like a fun idea.
It's a great idea. I don't know. I mean, I didn't know about that type of work when I was in college, but I mean, you go and hand out the tastings. You get to take the alcohol home in most cases, if the state allows it. Texas does. And so you work for like 3 hours. I mean, we have people making $120 for 3 hours worth of work, and they take home the leftover alcohol that they were giving away. So that's a pretty darn good deal. Wish I would have known about it when I was in college.
Right, a lot of money would have been saved and made, and it would have definitely fit a good schedule. Yeah. I mean, all the good things. Definitely a better option than just being a person at HEB, a cashier or something, working that $2.67 job where as a waiter or waitress.
Right. I think back then I was a pizza delivery driver. So,
damn, so how many different jobs did you to go through to find the first one you finally had? Like, what was your journey like to get to finally starting your own company?
So before that, I actually was a computer programmer mostly. And between computer programming jobs, when I was younger, while I was doing those, sometime when I was younger, I would also do pizza delivery. That was a pretty good gig in college because you got to bring home, you close the night, you bring home pizza. So free food as a college kid, and plus making okay money. And then I would do that after leaving my day job of programming. But I started programming right out of high school. I got a job offer in Florida, went there for about 3 months, came back to Texas, and went to school part-time for about 3 years before I quit, and then just kept programming up until I started my own business in 2002. So, and now what I do is manage computer programmers. It's a little bit different than what I've been doing with my TechBundle business, but it's more back to the roots of what I was doing when I first got started in computer work.
Program just seems so difficult to understand from someone who's an outside perspective, never being involved in it. It's an entirely different language, and it's your brain has to work a very particular way for, I think, to be involved with that, and also be interested enough to stare at a computer for that long, and then have the understanding that one little thing goes wrong, you have to go through all this program, this code to fix the thing. And sometimes it's something as simple as a space or a letter or whatever it may be. It just seems like insanity.
So what's funny is, when I was growing up, and I look back, and the best programming lesson I ever got was when I was in, I believe, kindergarten or first grade. And this was before computers were in the classroom. And these 2 high school kids came in and they sat in front of the class and they said, okay, they wanted the whole class to pretend they were aliens, and we were going to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And they had a jar of peanut butter and jelly up there and a loaf of bread and a knife. And we had to describe everything about it to these aliens because they didn't know. So it was the perfect example of what programming is actually like. It was like you had to tell them to take the jar, the lid off. Otherwise, they would just pound the knife the wrong way on top of the jar when you said put it in the jar. They did exactly what you told them to do. But yeah, it was a funny little, I guess, skit or whatever the high schoolers were doing. But I look back on it and it was the absolute best lesson for what programming is really like. And it's really just breaking a whole bunch of tasks down into their very simple, small components. And so it's a lot less difficult than most people think if you can just break it down into the tiny pieces. And so
that's a fun way to look at it. That's definitely, it helps, that the analogy helps me kind of understand the simplicity of it. I mean, it seems much more intense from an outside perspective, but if it literally just is being the most direct and just detail oriented, it requires a very detail oriented person, then I mean, that sounds like something that more people could probably partake in than I think I initially assumed.
It is, and most people just think it's something, some type of wizardry or something because it's on a computer, and it seems like we have to know something super fancy, but all programming breaks down into that basic, breaking it down into simple logic and and then just learning whatever syntax, whatever computer language you're programming in needs to do that. So,
what do you program with?
And so it's just describing out the objects. In our current stuff, we're programming in PHP and SQL, so it's all web-based language. What's funny is being out of the actual programming for 20 years, the last language I programmed in was PHP before coming back to this one, and seeing how much it had changed. And now I manage the programmers, and I can still get in there and do the debugging and help them with that. But day-to-day programming, the young guys that work for me, they're much better at it and faster at it than I am. I can muddle my way through, but they do it a lot faster and better than I do.
How does something change? What does that mean? Like it's changed so much, and why has it changed? What looks different? Is it the platform itself, or just what involved? Why is it different?
So there's the history, the history of the web over the last 20 years. We have a much a stronger need for security now. We have a lot of different layers to it. There's a lot more tools now to make things easier to develop faster that didn't exist when I was doing this 20 years ago. 20 years ago, right before the first internet bubble burst, everything was brand new. So if you needed a templating system or you needed a way to make things faster, you had to make that or and kind of throw all these pieces together. So just as fast as the internet has changed, you figure 20 years ago, when we're talking about, you didn't have YouTube, you didn't have all these great. The internet just wasn't what it is today. Still, most of the people back then were still using dial-up. So a lot's changed in what's the internet's capable of. So therefore, you have a lot more layers of when you're programming on it now.
So whenever you're programming using PHP, it communicates with the internet as a platform, and then uses whatever integrations you have, rather than I wish I could use maybe Python. Would Python be something that's not on using a web-based? Is it not web-based platform? And
Python is another computer programming language, and it is mostly used for internet based programming, and PHP can be used for programming that's not internet based as well, but it's primarily used for that. Python is another language that's commonly used now for that, but it's also used a lot for just doing text edit manipulation or data manipulation as well. So Python is just another tool that could be used, but we're just not using it right now.
So then what's the benefit of using PHP versus something like Python?
I think your connection is going in and out. That or mine is.
Hello?
Hey, I can hear you.
Cool. Are we good?
I cannot see you anymore.
That's unfortunate.
I think we are. I'm hearing you now. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, I hear you all right. So why would somebody do Python versus PHP? What are the benefits of one over the other?
Usually it's what you're comfortable with, what you've learned, and what the people hiring you want you to do and use. But I would say if you're Python's at least when it originally came out, was mostly to do quick, simple data manipulations. Like you wanted to just change the format of a whole bunch of data real quick. I think that's what it initially was used for. It's not really a language I've played with much. I know, but I know it started as a simpler programming language for people that just wanted to get involved and get started. So,
my dog's hanging out with us today. So, you've seen the industry grow and change quite a little bit from starting out with dial-up. What was it like programming back then versus what it looks like now? I know obviously that there's the internet differences, but this hardware itself has evolved quite a little bit since you've been involved. So how have those things changed, and what does it do differently?
Well, I would say that the biggest change is back then everything was meant to run on the computer that you're sitting in front of, whereas now most software these days is run out there on a server somewhere, and then you're just seeing a portal to it. And I mean, you still do have software on your computer. Obviously, a lot of people have like Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, but just as many also have Google Docs, which they use completely online. So I think that's the biggest difference. Is back then it was very much contained, and you didn't have the ability to interconnect as easily as what we've got now.
A lot
and
of these
almost
things
demanded now that everything's interconnected.
And so you used to, I used to have to pay for, I have to pay for Microsoft Word, Office, but I don't have to pay for Google Drive. How does a company continue to exist when I'm not ever paying for this service?
So how does like Google Drive and Google Docs make money since you're
Correct.
not paying for the product? Is that the question?
Yeah.
That's for them. It's very easy. They Google Docs is there as a way to allow them to get your eyeballs on them, and then whatever you're working on, they can use the data of where you're at. Like the fact that you're working on that a document is the start. But when you try to take your business to another level, you actually are paying for Google Docs and Google Sheets. If you run on the Google platform, you're going to pay, I think it's like $10 a month per employee to be able to have everyone using the same library or folder structure and being able to use Google Docs and Gmail and all that, all those things that were initially free. If you want to use them in a business with more than 5 employees, then you're going to pay for that. And in fact, I think now if you want to use it in business at all, you pretty much are paying for it. I don't think they have a plan for it being completely free anymore for a business, and to use it with like your domain name.
Okay. Well,
there is a charge for it.
Yeah, that's information I didn't know or I didn't have. That's kind of cool. So is that something that y'all use? What would be like? Should I use that? I guess is like, moving forward in my own company, my own business. Versus, I know that people are like, no, I would never use Google. I'm only ever going to use anything that has to do with Mac or Apple because of the security benefit of being with Apple. Is there?
Right.
How do you feel about using it for your own company?
So it depends. So we use, in my current company, we use the Google Suite. In my last company, we were completely Microsoft, we used to have customers that had all Apple computers and ran either one of the two as far as which because Apple doesn't make a competitive word processor and spreadsheet. They have them, but they're not really truly competitive. And so, but what we would tell our customers when I was at TechBundle is picking the one that is going to work with everything else you do is the most important. So if you have a small business that doesn't require a big software program to manage your whole business, that has to have that you need to integrate. So say you're a lawyer's office and you run a software that manages all your documents for you and manages all your customers, almost 99% sure that that software is going to integrate with Microsoft Word before it integrates with Google Docs. Now, it may do both, but it's definitely going to integrate with Microsoft Word. And if you had to add on another product to manage with that, it's also always going to manage or integrate with Microsoft products, because everyone's going to make their software work with Microsoft first, then they're going to make it work with Google, then they're going to make it work with whatever other products are out there. And same is true when you're talking about phones, is you can almost bet that every if you're talking about writing an application for a phone, you write it first for iPhone, because the market out there is for iPhone devices, and those are that your system is going to work. So we would tell our customers go all Microsoft, but if you wanted to have a system that worked off like had tablets for all of your employees or had phone applications for all your employees, then you should make sure all your employees had Apple products. So an iPhone or an iPad, because those were easier to manage. They're going to be more likely to work with any software that you're using. And if you ever had to change softwares, you wouldn't have to throw that hardware out and buy new hardware, because you can almost guarantee that it's going to will work for it. So it's all dependent on the size of your company, what you're trying to achieve, and what you're currently already having to work with on making those decisions.
That's kind of cool. Do you work a lot with like construction companies, or have you ever worked with construction companies?
Oh yeah, all the time. We used to work with several construction companies and oil field companies in my old company.
What are they a combination? I mean, obviously, I guess between the two, there's probably variances between the two, but Apple products, I would assume, for construction companies is a better bet because they're out in the field so much.
On the tablet and in the field, yes. And this is also dependent on the type of software you're using. There's some certain bidding softwares that I would say are probably better on an actual Windows machine. And if you're using those, then I would go with that. But if you're talking about construction guys that are just simply clocking in and out and filling out basic paperwork that ties back into the software back home, that's almost always going to be a platform that's going to work best on Apple. For a couple of reasons. One, you can lock those machines down so that if you give all your guys iPads, they can't run anything but the iPad software, like the software because the companies that didn't lock those down in construction, for some reason, they just kept coming up missing. But the moment you lock them down where their kids can't play with them when they take them home, they always seem to be available. So definitely in construction, I would say, having someone that can set that up and manage it correctly. Apple is usually the best solution. But again, it's going to be dependent on what software you're using back at the office and what they require and what they want to make it work and talk back. But our first pick was always to go Apple in that case. But then on the desktop, we would tell everyone they needed to have Windows machines because that tended to be the best case. And in a large construction company, it's not necessarily which is the cheapest. It's what's the total cost of ownership and what you're looking for the long term is like, if that computer's down, how much are you losing? And so yeah, we're going to spend $300 extra on selling you this computer now, but you're going to have less problems with it overall, and it's actually going to get the work done faster if you spend that money, and so things like that.
I didn't realize there was
larger companies.
I didn't realize there was so much intention behind this. What seems like minor or small things that can make a difference on how the long-term growth and functioning of a company. It's kind of really wild. I always assume that it's just like, oh, okay, we like Apple, so Apple just makes sense of what we're going to use. But it's fun to learn that there's actually there's a functionality, there's a benefit to using this versus that, and it depends on the location and what you're looking and how far you're looking to grow the company. It's kind of freaking crazy.
So what's interesting in the new job I'm in, we're a much smaller company and everyone just works on their own machines and everything. And we just work through a web interface, and that works for a company this size. But even this company, I'm starting to have to put in standardizations because we're starting to grow to the size where standards make more sense. It's like, okay, everyone has to be using this one browser when they use stuff, just so that if there's any problems, we know exactly, we get used to what the little hiccups are, and we can tell any new employees immediately what it is. And we're not having to relearn that just because they happen to try to use Firefox or Microsoft Edge or something like that. It's like, no, if you're going to you can do everything else you want at home on whatever browser you want. But if you're doing work, you need to be using this. And making those standardizations makes everything run smoother. As your company starts breaking, and anywhere from 10 to 20, that becomes of employees, that starts to become extremely important. And being very intentional about what you're buying becomes more and more important. That you're picking something that is the same throughout the whole system. So you don't get half the people trying to use the phone app on Apple and half the people trying to use it on an Android. That's a really bad practice. Is you're just asking for more money to be spent on supporting all that. So
do you consider the ambassadors employees as well? And do you make them use specific browsers or material that would have that standardizations?
I wish I could, but no, we don't. They're 1099 contractors. So the ambassadors, which we refer to as dragons, by the way, that's part of the Higher Dragons name. We consider the ambassadors dragons, but we have to deal with those issues inside our own companies. And in fact, we just rolled out a new feature. And one of the biggest things, when a dragon gets on, they check in that they're at the location. And the biggest problem we've had with rolling that out is it doesn't work on iPhone 6 version, iOS version 11.2 or whatever. Just making up numbers now, but it works fine on the brand new iPhone 11 with iOS 15. Those are the type of issues that after we rolled that out.
You can't really force people to buy new phones.
To buy. Exactly. And so we have to deal with those issues, and so when we roll out a feature like that that's very dependent on hardware, we have to spend a few weeks just ironing out all the little bugs on something like that. And so, which, for most people, they're like, well, why doesn't it work? It's like, because, this is the process of computers.
And that doesn't seem like a small task. That seems, you said a couple of weeks to work on a couple different bugs, but I feel like those are some pretty intense, like to go and try to figure out how to make this program that I've already written to work on a older device. It seems like that would be quite a complex task.
It is. There's still some standardization that we can look at. And we do have some testing platforms that allow us to test for the most common stuff before we even roll out to prevent having to have major issues. But, everything is, we get so used to that it's, in this day and age that it's just, I press a button and I say Git, and I now have the software on my computer or on my phone. And that's all, that's about all there is to it now. But there's a lot going on in the background, and every machine is different. And, as much as, everything is there for people to have automatic updates to keep everything trying to be standardized. A lot of people don't use those. And there are a lot of people that don't want to upgrade their phone every 2 years, or every year, depending, because they're just not that concerned about if they've got the latest and greatest technology. And there are some people that don't upgrade their phone until that one physically dies, and that can sometimes be 6 years. And in technology terms, that's been dead for 3 years. So,
damn. Are you a buy in every year kind of guy?
I'm a buy every other year type of guy, actually. Unless there's some extremely good reason for me to, like a new feature of a phone that I would want to. I'm not the type to go stand in line at Apple for my new iPhone. I'll wait until the new version's been out a little while, make sure that all the major issues with whatever the new product is out, and then I'll go get a new one. Now my personal laptop, and that I'm about a 3-year guy. So that's typically what I like to do on my laptop or my desktop computers, 3 to 4 years. And so
I had I finally got this new laptop. I just bought a MacBook, and before this one, I had purchased I guess 2 laptops ago. I had an Alienware that I felt I had an emotional connection to, and I kept that laptop for probably like 8 years, and it was the worst thing to use. It was just not moving fast, and I was like, no, like I really want to hold on to this thing. And I finally got a new laptop, and I was like, holy shit, stuff is so much better now, insanely better.
Yeah, and now the nice thing about Alienware is that it is a gaming type laptop. That's what they do. So that laptop probably easily lasted 4 or 5 years. As far as still being operational, it was slower than anything new. As long as you weren't trying to play games on it after about 3 years, you would be fine. But it was definitely not playing the games like it used to after probably the second year. So.
Damn. And it's crazy that all this software continues to advance. And then I'm just, people are it's not a small investment, that computer. And if you want, you also don't have to get the newest and greatest thing. But if you wanted to make it a profession, you wanted to be a streamer, right? And you're really trying to be competitive and do the whole thing, then you're having to chunk out some change there to keep up with the advances of softwares and gaming systems, and then make sure your hardware is able to keep up with that kind of power. It just seems extremely expensive. Like it can be.
It can definitely get that way. It definitely can be. I mean, but if all you're doing is, doing streaming is obviously very intensive. But if your most computer work is pretty simple data entry type work, and those type of computers can last a little bit longer. They're not being pushed to their limits. My computers, I push them to the limits because I'm playing games on them, or I'm trying out new software, different types of stuff that I want to tinker with or, play with. So next week I might download a 3D animation software just for the fun of it, play with it for a weekend, and then never reopen it. But that takes a lot of computer power when you want to do stuff like that. And I don't like not being able to do something if I choose to do it. So I spend a little bit extra and,
I love that.
What will work. And so, yeah.
I like that your hobbies are to find softwares and to play with them. Like that seems fun. It seems relaxing. It seems like you can create your own little world on this crazy little device that has so much power and impact and has changed everything about the way our world works now. And I feel like it's in our faces and we can just recognize, oh, it's right here. It just is what it is. But if you kind of like take a step back and look at it, you're like, oh my God, like this thing is really changed the way all of this works. And in quite a short period of time.
Yeah. And I like to spend a lot of time thinking about, the last 20, 30 years of what's changed since I've been really got into all of this. And basically graduating high school and getting into the work environment the last 30 years, and how far we've come. And I spent a lot of time looking at, okay, well, what's coming next? The computer now, it used to be such a mystery. And now, toddlers are walking around doing more than I could with my old Tandy color computer that I was playing with at home. And the thing I like to look at is like, well, what's that next thing? And I look at it and I see things like robots. They don't seem that intrusive right now, but I would say that the robotics field is exactly where we were with the personal computer in the 1980s. So think about that. That means in less than 30 years, robots will be doing all those crazy things we think about that robots should be doing, like going and picking up groceries, doing the dishes, cleaning the house, and everything from way back when we watched them in the cartoon The Jetsons and everything when I was a kid. That's all going to be a reality. I mean, and you already start to see some of these things from the Roomba that's simply doing the vacuum cleaning in your house. That seems it seems like that's such a far leap. But then look what the PC was in 1980. The home computer was in 1980, and look at what you're carrying around in your hand every day. And so I really have a lot of fun just thinking those things out. Self-driving cars and all that. That's we're looking at a very exciting next 20, 30 years too. And I think that's where all the fun's going to be. I think the fun in the personal computer was during the 80s and 90s, or in the 90s and 2000s. That's when it was all revolutionary, and now it's kind of gotten more mainstay. But we're going to start seeing that with robots and artificial intelligence, and then virtual reality. That I think that'll be a bit slower to take a tick up, but not far off. I think it's just it hasn't gotten to the level that robotics have yet.
Why do you think that VR is behind robotics?
Because robotics have been out since the 60s and 70s. And VR got its start in the 90s. So it's still got a long ways to go to before it has its candlestick of mainstay. It's still got a lot of mind share to grab, and it's probably going to take most of my generation getting to the point where we're that we're no longer the majority, that all the millennials and the Gen Z have overtaken us completely in number, and whatever we're going to call the next generation starts to become the mainstay, because there's a lot to overcome for that. But my generation is not going to have any problems with robotics, and the technology is a lot further along in history. It has a longer lifespan to it than what VR has. So I think it's further off than most people think it is, but only by 10, 20 years. But still, that's quite a bit when you're talking about the technology world.
A little bit of maybe a deviation here, but I think it's super cool that I feel like your generation was born in, like, you guys had the right timing of all of it. I mean, you guys got the right time to see the evolution of humanity and what it's become now. Like, you guys got to skip out on, I mean, you still definitely had some more stuff there, but like, not, I don't know, maybe some big stuff, whatever. I just feel like y'all had a, the cool, at least maybe in the technology world, the coolest opportunity to see all of it go and grow from then, and then in the next 20, 30 years, you're still gonna be around. You're still gonna be able to see these things. You're gonna see the entire evolution from big ass computers to who knows, right? The robotics, the AI, I don't know. It seems weird to think that we're going to have robots cleaning our house and going to get groceries. But if that's the reality, we get to see that, then you guys like really came away in the right spot.
I think we all, if we look back in history, that every generation has a bit of that. But I definitely think we are. We're seeing a very unique one in compute era. If we go back to my grandparent or great grandparents, they were very much in that revolution of transportation. You figure the big transportation when they were my great grandparents was they went from the train to having cars to having airplanes, being all forms of transportation. So that was a huge, massive change in society as well. And I think if you could probably go back and find all those things, and everyone would say, man, it would have been so cool to be just getting into cars in, when they were in the 20s, when they were just becoming the big thing. And everyone, when they became a household type thing, that would have been a great time to be in that. And then we had it again with the internet and now robotics, I think that's where we're at right now. This generation of Gen Zers, they're going to see this all with, all this stuff happen with robots. They'll be completely changing the world. I mean, a fast food restaurant like McDonald's and Taco Bell is just going to be an oversized vending machine. It's not going to have any employees in it. And that's just the way it's going to go. And then, but that's not a bad thing. That's going to open up change a whole lot of things in our society. It'll take all those menial jobs, and it'll make a new need of I believe art and entertainment. I think we're going to have a huge surge in the arts and entertainment, and I think we're already seeing that with what you're doing. And it's not going to be the old idea of art and entertainment in the sense that we'll have a lot of that, but it's going to be, we're already seeing it. It's content providers. All you guys doing podcasts and streaming and all these things. This is a new art platform, and you're making a living at it. A lot of people are, and that's going to be where we're already seeing a problem in the job market, because so many of the new generation are willing to make it off of what they can make off of what content creation they can do. So why go get a traditional job if they can make their money that way? And it's hurting the job market, because we expected all those young people to come fill these jobs that my parents are leaving, and my generation is even starting to leave. And they're not there because they're doing content creating, which is art and entertaining and all of that. And I think we're going to see a big surge in it. I think we're going to see a huge artistic renaissance type thing coming in the next 20 years.
Your take on that, when we initially talked about it over on the first Friday, kind of opened my eyes a bit,
It just your take on it seemed to be very, very well thought out and very likely, and uh, it was both very very. I don't know if inspiring is the right word, um, but we're going to go with it. So it was both very inspiring and kind of fear kind of give me some fear as well. It's like, okay, then what is the world going to look like? What like this construction manager job, is that gonna what is that role going to look like in 20 years? Is it going to exist? Or I feel like drivers we know are not like commercial drivers are not likely going to exist. It's safer to have um, self-driving trucks. But what about all these other things that I think are necessary, because I don't know any other option? So both, I think, exciting, but also a little stressful, if you, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many things that will happen, and in different industries, we'll take them on at different rates. Construction probably will be one of the slower to pick up on some of it. In a management position, that probably is not going to go away as much as now you're going to be not only managing people, but you're going to be managing robots as well, or a service that provides a robot for putting up drywall or laying the foundation. That the actual work will be done by the robots with someone programming it or managing it, and then you still need someone to oversee it. Robots are still long ways from being multi-purpose jobs, which is what a human overcomes. Is that we can be good or good enough at multiple jobs, as opposed to a robot, which can be exact and perfect every time at one job. And now there is some flexibility with that, but it's still limited to what a robot's going to be able to, the type of tasks that they're going to be able to replace humans for. But it's going to be more the, this one particular job and everything around that, swinging a hammer. You could probably program a robot easily to do that better. One, they wouldn't even have to swing the hammer. They could, they'd just push the nails right in. But there's so that might change there. But you're still going to need the managers for a long time. And then at the same time, you got to remember the other technologies that are going on and advancing. So space colonization is going to be hitting about the same time as the robots start doing more and more work on here on Earth. And you want in space, when you're colonizing and you don't know what you're going to run into, you want humans. You want people that can adapt quickly and don't have to be reprogrammed. They just adapt and do. So when you're talking about, everything from at first just hotels in space for travel to colonization of Mars, and we all know this is coming. I mean, it used to be that was science fiction, but I don't think anyone doubts that there will be a day that we're going to have a million people living on Mars. That just, I think that's pretty much understood at this point in history, that we've already got all the technology to do it. We just got to go out and do it. So, and so those things, they're just going to move around. And you start adding all the little pieces together. And, I think I wouldn't be scared about it. I would just, be open to the change that you may have to adjust, the way, what you're managing. And like you're saying, if you're a construction manager, what you're managing, and look for, and be aware of how soon does it make financial sense for me to stop hiring people to put up drywall and hire a robot service that all they do is drywall service, because they're going to have less waste. They're going to spend less time doing it. No one's going to call in sick. And they're just going to come in and the service will come in, put up all the drywall, and we start using a robotic service instead of hiring people to do that particular job. And just being very much on the lookout for that, because that's what's going to make you competitive and keeping that manager position, is watching those technologies and being able to implement them at the right time when it makes sense. Probably not going to make sense the day they invent the machine, but there is going to be a point where it's obviously going to be cheaper and faster.
Someone's going to have to try it out. Someone's going to take that first leap with that
Yep.
1.0 version and have to spend a shit ton of money to figure out, one, how to manage it, and then two, all the nuances that are going to be wrong with the machine when it first comes out, right? When does it stop? When does it cut? How does it know with different floor plans? Like all these little things that I think are they're programmable. It's just introducing all that new information to this computer that doesn't know what to do, right? And then with this guy who doesn't know really how to manage it initially, probably, and then how to troubleshoot on the job site, right? I think that's what's going to make me into a better, if I end up staying in the construction management role, that's what's going to make me the better person. How fast can I troubleshoot this robot because it is cutting sheetrock too short or whatever it may be? And then I don't know if that's something like the previous company that you had sold, if that was going to be in, like, is that the service that's going to continue to exist? And then I would be like, hey, Steve, I don't know what's going on with this thing. Can you help me out here? And you can just access it from wherever you are.
Well, much like you do now, you hire a subcontractor for each trade. You hire a plumber to come in and plumb the house. Honestly, I don't know what you're building, but if you're building houses, you hire a plumber to come in and plumb the house. You hire an electrician to come in and wire the house. And you really don't care if he's using humans or robots. You just got to be looking out for the guy that says, oh, we're using robots. We're going to be 50% cheaper because we're using a robot, and it's all on him. And you're going to expect him to be able to handle all that. Now, if you were a specific trade, then you would need to know how to troubleshoot those machines. But it's a matter of, okay, when that guy comes up to you, is like, well, how many of these jobs have you done? What's your backup plan if this doesn't work? The first few times you're going to want to know, do you have a crew that can come in and do it by hand if your machine decides not to work? And by the time these companies come out, that's most of those bugs are going to be worked out. But and they're still and now to do drywall, what you're going to have is you're going to have some geeky kid that comes in and says, oh no, I put this machine in the middle of the room. It laser measured everything, and we've already got this precisely measured, and the robot knows exactly where to put everything, and down to that it's never going to miss a stud when it puts a nail in. It's like I was saying, it's going to know exactly how many sheets to use, because you're not going to have shortages, because it's got a better idea than even your plans do of exactly what the size of that room is, because of the sensors and everything. And all this stuff I'm talking about, all those sensors and all that technology technically already exists. And it's just somebody hasn't packaged it as a service yet and gone out and done it. As far as I know, I'm not in that world. Maybe somebody is doing it and I just don't know about it.
I want to know the person that's doing it. I think it exists in like the cars, right? There's all sorts of sensors, and in manufacturing plants, I'm sure there's a lot of sensors that exist. There was a company that I attempted to interview with that sold, they sold sensors, and they just did a shit ton of different types of sensors. They did all the ones for Tesla and several other big companies. And so, I mean, they definitely exist. I mean, that it's a reality that's out there. It's just not something that I feel like is talked about all the time, because I mean, it's not typical conversation, I guess.
Yeah. But there are, so we were talking about the Roomba earlier. There are robotic lawnmowers that you can get. You can go online, buy them off Amazon right now, and they basically work like a Roomba, but for your yard. Well, there are companies that already have started where you don't buy the robot. You just pay for a service, like I pay for lawn care service at my house, and they come in, they install the robot, and they say, call us if there's any problems. And then they come back and do regular maintenance on it here and there. And they can be competitive against the guys that are mowing my lawn right now, because they're not rolling a truck with all those guys. I'm not having to spend the multiple $1,000s to buy the robot myself. And if it breaks, I just call these guys and tell them, hey, for some reason my grass is getting long. What's going on? And then they roll out a new robot and fix that one or whatever they're doing. Those companies already exist, but we don't hear about them on a day-to-day basis. But there are already, those companies already exist. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's not companies out there already doing some of this robotic construction work that we're talking about, that and they're just often a part of the world that we don't know about, or we just haven't seen them yet.
I think it makes me
but
really
all the
excited.
Technology is already there.
I love this, and it makes me think that the fitness industry is going to end up being one that I don't think robots will be able to be inside of, because it's physical fitness. The intention is to move our bodies, and then if we're not, this is so cool. If you're not having people who are out there doing the labor anymore, more people are sitting down, getting fat like me. It's like you have to have people who are dedicated to helping people stay fit and healthy. And so I think the fitness industry could really benefit massively from the introduction of more robots, which is kind of cool. Yes,
I think so. I think inside the actual fitness industry, in your bigger gyms, they might use robots. They'll use robots, of course, for cleaning and for, but also to make it safer. To have a telepresence of someone like yourself that can do training. Now, instead of being limited to working at one gym, you can rent the use of a robot at any gym in the world, and you can train anyone in the world and be there with them and spot them and look at them and help them in a telepresence sense. That's something that would be possible too. So it's going to open up new doors. But the technology is all there. Some of the robotics there that I'm stretching a little bit of some of those robotics, but not too far about what's already out there. There are robotic telepresence. Now they don't have the arms to do the spotting portion of what I just said, but everything else is already out there and being used in the world, in healthcare and in office spaces already. So, but they're happening in such small workplaces that most people don't see it yet. And that's why I say it's exactly where we were in the 80s and the personal computer, when my dad was telling me that's just a toy and no one's ever going to use that as a serious thing. And you're just playing and wasting all your time on that computer all day. That's what my dad used to tell me in the 80s. And what's funny is I remember him saying, you'll never see me get on one of those things. And now you can't get him off his computer. And unfortunately, you can't get him off Facebook either. So
that's so good. I mean, how the turns table. God, I love it. So stuff like Facebook and stuff like that, I'm interested to hear what you think. I'll have another before that. What does robots and what does that do for the industry you're currently in, for the brand ambassadors? I mean, I think you're always going to have sales of some sort. You need the salesperson, right. And that's what this brand ambassador is. And so thinking out loud, I don't think it goes away. I think it helps your business.
So our business is very personal, and you have to physically be there to taste something. and for the brand ambassador. And it's actually, I think it's going to open up more on the event staffing side. It's going to have more and more events because and we're already seeing this next generation thinks that 30 hours a week is a long week of work. That's working too hard. When that permeates and people have so much extra time because of robots and everything, what you're going to see is that there's going to be more festivals, there's going to be more events, there's going to be more need to socialize on a real basis and get real human contact, that we're going to see more people doing things like that. So our business is going to be in those spots. Now, are we going to be in liquor stores doing this? I don't know, but we're going to be in spots where there are people and brands need to get their message out. And now some of that might be my guys manning a whole bunch of virtual robots. So I have one employee that's doing a brand. Instead of doing in one store, he's now in 10 stores, operating 10 different robots, essentially, which the robot's doing 90% of the work, but they're still doing the one-on-one connection with a human being, because there's nothing that's going to be, storytelling is not going to be replaced by robots. And that's ultimately what the brand ambassador world is about, is sharing the story of a brand. And it's not just handing out the tasting. That's not what sells and gets the extra sales. It's that genuine connection you have because the guy told you about how the wine was made at the vineyard where his great grandparents got married and they bought the vineyard, and then that story makes you connect to wanting to buy that wine no matter what it tastes like. And that's what humans will always seek after. It's one of the basic needs of our species, is that connectiveness. And so I see, we'll have to evolve just like any other business, but we understand what the core reason behind what we do is, and it's about that. It's not about sending people out to hand out little cups of alcohol. So that's what, and because we understand that, I don't think we're going to have a problem surviving as the technology changes around this.
I love that. That's awesome. So that I want to hear your perspective on how you think Facebook and Meta is growing, and that the social media platforms, just whatever that take. I don't know. I want you to kind of like take the lead on that one. But I'm interested in your perspective on, I guess, the growth of Meta.
So what I love about both Meta and Tesla is that both of those guys are willing to jump out there before it's ready to go. So Tesla with the self-driving car, someone's got to push us over the line of the self-driving car and be willing to take the hits for when it doesn't work and it fails. And same with virtual reality. We all know, or in the tech world, we know that virtual reality is going to be a big thing. But somebody's got to make that first big leap and make that push and be the first player to entry. I don't know if that means that necessarily that either Tesla or Facebook will be the ones that make the metaverse that everyone wants to be in. There's nothing protecting them to keep that industry contained within their own world. And first to market definitely in the technology world does not always, or rarely actually means that they're going to be the ones that everyone goes with, but they are going to push that technology to the next level and be the pioneers that get us there. So is Facebook going to be around in 20 years in some form or fashion? Yeah. It would be hard for them to lose enough money to be out of business in 20 years. It really would. But are they going to be the center of everything? I don't know. There might be another, after all the mistakes they make, it'll be easy for someone to say, okay, this is what it's actually going to look like in the real implementation. So we don't have all that baggage. So we now can come in and do it much cheaper than Meta and provide a better product because we didn't try to pioneer that industry. And same with self-driving cars. I think that's definitely going to happen to Tesla. Personally, that's just my personal opinion. But I think that's he's just pushing that envelope, and that's going to be the catalyst that gets us all to taking on self-driving cars. And I think a lot of companies are sitting back and letting Tesla take that the first few decades of this, a couple of decades of this, until it becomes okay. They're not having any more problems. They're not getting lawsuits every other week. So now we'll enter this, and then someone like Toyota and Honda and all of them will just blow them out of the water, and it'll be everywhere. Yeah. So
I think that's a pretty accurate perspective. I mean, you saying it out loud, listening to it, always like, oh yeah, well yeah, that kind of makes sense. It's somebody's going to let. It's cool that they are leading the industry, but there's going to be someone who's better and bigger who's not going to have as many of the. Somebody's already done all the work, all the front end work. So then now I can take that now more completed product, and my starting line is much further than their starting line. They did amazing things. Not to take that away, but it's just I'm going to be better because I have more time to improve off of this baseline.
Right. And, and if I sat down and really thought about it, probably what would happen is Tesla would push this and get the self-driving car. I mean, you already look at what they did in the electric portion of it. They've already got all the other players to say, well, this is a no-brainer. Let's all go electric. Now pushing them to the next level where they all say, let's go self-driving. The other companies are being more conservative, with lane assist and a couple other features. But they are being a lot more conservative than Tesla. And I think ultimately what will happen is Tesla will get to the point where there's nothing super unique about them, though, as far as that they're not pushing any envelopes anymore, and that they'll go back to being a high performance luxury type product. Not that they're a cheap product now, but that will be where they go back to, and there'll be a brand that is there for a pure luxury standpoint, high dollar end product, or they'll be bought out by one of the other companies, and at the point where they start to see diminishing returns from being the pioneer in this. But again, that's not happening tomorrow. That's just long term. So,
I mean, you have it's in a world that seems it's where it's so easy to look short term. A constant reminder that all of this is long term. Right? Hopefully, all the things that we're doing, they all have long term effects, and what those might look like. And just thinking about them a little bit is a good thing. It's helpful. It's fun. It's we can never tell or know what's going to exactly happen, but we can have a pretty good understanding of where we're going with all these things. And the picture that you paint, I feel, is much nicer, much kinder than I think what is typically talked about on like, I don't know, maybe on CNN or whatever news platform. I feel like if you really talk to people who are in it, who are thinking about it, who are leading things, you get to hear this really cool perspective on what a beautiful opportunity is being presented to us and what we're living in. And so I thank you for your time and thank you for your input. And I think I definitely want to do this again. That unfortunately I'm going to have to go here pretty soon. So before we get off, I always give someone the opportunity to have their own little monologue at the very end. So I'm going to let you talk. Whatever you want to leave people with. I mean, you've lived a quite quite a long and interesting life, and you've done a lot of cool things. And so maybe like a lesson or something to somebody who's listening is kind of the idea, but you can kind of take it and run with it as you please. But once you finish, I'm going to go to stop the recording, and I'll hang out with you after.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier that one of the ways we met was through dancing. And I think back to a dance lesson I was having with a woman named Patty Vo, and she was teaching a class, and she said something that when I heard it, it just made me think, this is the missing value and component of my business, of my life, and everything. And it was this simple phrase she said, and she was talking to us about when you're dancing, for those 3 minutes you're dancing to a song, be an active participant, not a willing victim. And she said, you don't need to be looking off, thinking about who you're dancing with next. Just be active participant in what you're doing, not a willing victim in it. And I mean, it's one of the few times in my entire life that when I heard something or saw something that I had this great epiphany that it just opened up everything that it opened up a lot of answers to a lot of things. It opened up to a problem I was having with at the time in my company with employees and what we were trying, how to give the message to our employees about what we wanted from them. It opened to my customers at the time about what we wanted from them. We wanted customers that were engaged and were active participants in helping them succeed, not just being willing victims and giving us money to just solve the problems when they have problems. Let us actively participate and do things. And definitely with our vendors, it answered so many issues in my company. And then I started applying it to my life. Is like, do I want to be an active participant in what I'm doing or just a willing victim? I go out dancing. Do I want to ask someone to dance or do I just want to sit back and watch? I want to be an active participant. When I go out and I see someone sitting at First Friday, do I just want to wave at them and say hello as I'm walking by, or do I want to sit down and have a conversation with them, be an active participant? And so that would be what I'd say is probably the biggest, most profound lesson I think I've learned in recent years, and it impacts every part of my life. And it all came from a dance lesson. That's what I'd leave everyone with, as being an active participant, not a willing victim.